Hey everyone, I wanted to go over my build real quickly. Let's start with my gear. Um, the usual stuff, max fury, life, cooldown reduction. Ideally you would want more defensive stats like armor here, but I found what I found, and then yeah, you want to imprint the fortify here, because I am gonna go for damage reductions. Damage reductions in this game is like really important. As a barbarian, um, is the one of the primary stats you're looking for. Next is my armor. The Ideally you want challenging shout instead of the rallying cry, but I found what I found, and yeah, it's all the defensive stats you want. Most likely the damage reductions is really important, and yeah, the iron skin. Since I'm using iron skin build, yeah, it grants you unstoppable. This is really important, so you print that, and I have gloves for HotA. Yeah, just yeah, there's nothing special about it. Ideally you want another lucky hit chance here instead of dexterity. Um, I have my pants. I recently just swapped life for strength because I felt like I had enough life, and yeah, you want mostly primarily defensive stats here, and yeah, damage reductions as well, all the good stuff, and my shoes, which grants you unstoppable when you're using your rallying cry and iron skin, and fury cost reduction is really important. My weapons, I'm kind of embarrassed about it. I was a whirlwind barb until level 88, and then I just recently switched over. So I mean, I didn't find the best gear I could, but this is what I have. I have vulnerable damage. Ideally, you want like a close damage, damage to close enemies instead of all stats. But yeah, and you want a max roll of crit damage as well. Um, and yeah, you want to quake here and crit damage to vulnerable enemies. Yeah, how you multiplayer damage is just stacking crit damage in crit chance plus vulnerable to enemies. So yeah, yeah, go for those two swords with vulnerable damage and critical damage and strength and damage to close enemies. They have bleed imprint as well as the max fury imprint. And this one, limitless rage. Um, you wanna, yeah, vulnerable damage. This one's a pretty decent roll. I mean, I could find more stats on vulnerable and crit damage, but that's just min maxing, right? Um, Next we have my ring. I mean, my rings are not that great, but I found what I found. Yeah, I need to find a one higher for shout and fury generation and six higher for resource generation. It's just min maxing at this point. I just hit max level yesterday. And yeah, this one, yeah, you want ideally you want a max fury and resource generation, but I went with vulnerable and crit chance because that's what I found. Yeah, and you just put all the skulls here because you just want to stack armor. And for so here's the thing, I have different settings for PvP and PvE. When I'm trying for higher tier nightmare dungeon, I'm gonna go for this amulet, which gives me tons of armor and cooldown reduction. And I mean, it's not a great roll, I know, but you know, I have what I have, and yeah, this one really helps. If I swap with this one, my life basically almost becomes 10k, and then or my armor almost becomes 10k, and then I become really hard to kill. You ideally you want fury cost reduction and cooldown reduction and stuff like that. But for PvP, I found instead of having this um, imprinted, the armor stacking, because this is great for nightmare dungeons. Don't get me wrong, but in PvP, since it's so paced, and then it's all about the burst damage. I found this ring just for PvP, right? I mean, it has a max roll and movement speed. I mean, no mercy passive, that's garbage. But all defensive skills, I mean, it could be three, but at least I have it. And then yeah, I could have the max cooldown reduction. But what's important is the maxed out movement speed. And what's imprinted on it is that every time I crit, my hammers increases attack speed by literally 35%. So yeah, it's a really important part. if I literally move around with this amulet on, you can see how fast
Not
I
while
am.
I'm in
I mean,
town.
when I'm PvPing, people cut me all the time using mage class and all, so it's really important to be able to move around fast and be able to use your skills and get some cooldowns on it. So yeah, the movement speed it is really important stat in PvP. So let me go over with my Paragon board really quickly now. Let me just go over my skills. So it's pretty regular stuff. I have a 1 point into lunging strike. I procced bleed because I used to have a bleed build, but I'm not sure if it's worth anymore. But I'm just gonna keep it on because just for the armor proc because I get armor for each time I damage an enemy. So bleed proc is included in that, and so Hammer of the Ancients, good stuff. Regular route. Regular route here as well. I mean, ideally you want like 11 points to the challenge shop by having like 4 points in your armor and then like putting 5 points in here. But I have what I have. Instead, I have higher points in Rallying Cry, so I sort of balance them out like this. And then, yeah, Iron Skin. This is really key when you're PvPing higher level because this grants you Unstoppable with your imprinted armor, and it only has cooldown of like 10 seconds. And if I have a higher cooldown reduction on this with the maxed out roll, then it almost becomes like 10.27 seconds, which is really key. And like this grants you unstoppable, this grants you unstoppable, so you have like 2 unstoppables, and becoming unstoppable is like key in PvP because that's when you can like ignore all the stuns and ignore all the CC controls and then just deal all the burst damage that you need to kill the enemy. Here, ideally, I mean, I have 3 points in the swiftness because I like to be fast in PvP. Like I said, movement speed is really important to be able to get your cooldowns back up and be able to kite and catch up to the enemy who's kiting you. So I put 3 points in here, but when you're trying out for a higher Nightmare Dungeon, you want 3 points in here instead. God Royale, like this makes you a lot more tanky. And I have 3 points in here for more fury generation, Pit Fighter, all the good stuff, and 3 points in all of this. Yeah, this just makes you. This is like essential. You need like 3 points in all of this, I feel like, and of course Unbridled Bridge. My Paragon points. Yeah, you're probably wondering about that. I started with this route here. I did take a note from what's his name, Rob2526 or something. Yeah, the best barb in the world. His build, one of his HotA build was amazing, so I sort of took it in and it made it mine. So big thanks to him, and then another Korean gamer, Binu. I started with the Wrath here, and then I routed here. Got the Raw Power and Hunter Killer. Hunter Killer is really important. This makes you do tons of damage versus players because players count as elites, right? And then yeah, more damage to players, elites. This is important here. And then as a glyph, I have a Marshal. And then I routed here. Yeah, 200 armor. This is huge. Yeah, and then I route here. And then more Fury. I took both Furies, Hungering Fury and Core Reserve. And this is important. The Warbringer gives you Fortify, and Fortify makes your damage reductions higher. So yeah, I have that. I have Exploit here. Then I route it here. I have Might here. And all the vulnerable damage, all the good stuff. And then I only took vulnerable damages and then armor. Yeah, and then after that I came here and then yeah, took Tenacity, bigger here, Territorial. Yeah, I don't really need like the actual, what is this, Bonebreaker, I don't need that. Then I routed here, and I got the Brash, and I got a Fierce. And for the last glyph, I used Undaunted. Yeah, so Undaunted, Territorial, Might, Exploit, Marshal, and Wrath. Yeah, I basically just took his build in and then just customized a little bit here and there. But yeah, this is I feel like the best build for tankiness plus burst damage in PvP because yeah, it just maximizes your vulnerable damage. Like here, like this is huge, right? all this vulnerable damage, and damage reduction from vulnerable damage enemies. Like that makes you really tanky and strong in PvP. In terms of stats, I have in PvP I have like 9,000 armor. In terms of speed though, movement speed, this is what's important. Yeah, I have like 157. I just fly around in PvP and I just catch up to people, just burst them down. Especially with this flip to 35% faster hammer smash speed. I mean, this one you can get tankier in PvP, and it might be greater for bar versus bar fight or like melee class fights, but yeah, this one is not like the greatest because you can't really stack PvP armor stacks because they just kite you all the time. Like you will see like rogues and like mage, they just kite you until eternity because that's what they're supposed to do, right? I mean, but yeah, you have to catch up to them as a barb, and you know movement speed helps, and this faster attack speed helps you burst them down, which I found a lot more helpful than that amulet. And yeah, crit damage I stacked up 430%. Vulnerable damage with my hammer on, it's probably like 400 something. Yeah, 430% with my hammer on. Yeah, so I basically like 1-to-1 ratio. That's I didn't even notice that, but that's kind of crazy. 430 for crit and vulnerable. That's what you want to stack, and 42% crit chance. Yeah, and all the good stuff. Max life, I have like 14k, but I don't really need that high of life. I want to swap this ring for resource generation and max fury instead of close damage and max life. So yeah, you have more than enough life if you have like 11k or 12k or 13k, something like that. And yeah, like all the damage reductions here is good. And PvP tips, if you're doing barb versus barb, it's all about just who's gonna burst who when their shouts are down, because shouts are extremely OP. Like this makes you literally take 50% less damage. But yeah, you have to hit them. You have to burst them down basically when their shouts are down, and it's all about the timing. It's all about sort of kiting and like getting your cooldowns back up, and yeah, stuff like that. So movement speed always helps. If you're versus rogue or mage class or like any ranged class, yeah, it's just all about using your rallying cry, berserking. Like this both gives you movement speed and lunging strike. You can like sort of like dash forward to them, get a range on them like this. So you sort of want to be like dash, hammering, stuff like that, right? Yeah, you always want to be using your dash forward, especially this shoes. It really helps because it literally gives you 75% movement speed for 1 second when you're dashing. So use your dash, berserk, rally, gives you tons of movement speed. You're able to gain range on them and burst down there. It's always a great winning strategy. Yeah, like I can't emphasize enough how important movement speed is, but also yeah, you want like a fury cost reduction on here as well. And yeah, like 3 roll on all defensive stats. Like I have by no means a great year, but since so many of you guys wanted to see a sort of guide or PvP, I'm still exploring. And since I only hit level 100 yesterday, I'm planning on making a PvP rogue as well. I come from sort of like a Korean League of Legends background, kind of toxic PvP environment, and everyone extremely competitive and toxic and stuff like that, right? So yeah, I love Diablo. I've been playing since Diablo 2, since I was a kid. I'm like, you know, almost 30 now. I'm a big fan, and it was my hobby. But since you know, so many of you guys were sort of like enthusiastic about my video, I'm just sort of help you guys with PvP tips, and yeah, maybe make a new rogue video, PvP stuff like that. Yeah. So thank you guys. Just gonna cut it here, and yeah, here was my Heart of Ancients Barbarian guide. Peace.